Well, very good afternoon. On behalf of everyone at TeamLease RegTech, I welcome you all to yet another session of experts speaking on a very important topic on compliance, which is creating a culture of compliance with technology. We all know that managing compliance in India is complex. It takes time, it takes expertise, it takes resources, and we all also know that compliance is not a destination, it's a journey. Ad hoc, manual, paper-based, and people-dependent compliance programs, in spite of best intentions, they fail to deliver. They fail to scale. And today, we have an elite panel comprising of three of the industry veterans. Between them, they've spent more than 60 years managing compliance, risk management, governance, and audits, who will talk about how do we create a culture of compliance in organizations with technology. So let me quickly introduce the panel to all of us. Let's take down the screen so that everybody is visible. Let me introduce you to Pooja Sehgal Mehtani. Pooja brings over 20 years of rich experience and is a general counsel and company secretary for the Asia Services Center for Sun Life. As a member of the leadership team, she is responsible for shaping legal strategy with rapid advancements in IT and IT-enabled services industry, and is focused on corporate governance and is a key contributor to organizational planning. Prior to Sun Life, she was a general counsel, company secretary, and ethics and compliance officer at Suez, and prior to that, a legal counsel and company secretary at Sansperels Greenlands. Pooja is also a diversity, equity, and inclusion representative of Sun Life Asia Service Centers. She's also invested in facilitating diverse hiring practices, increasing cultural competencies, and setting diversity, equity, and inclusion goals and the strategy for the organization. She's a lawyer and member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India. Pooja has interests in diverse culinary forms and art. She likes to travel, spend time with her family, watch varied content on TV, and read biographies. Pooja, welcome to the session today.
Thanks so much, Rishi. Thanks for the introduction.
You're most welcome. Let me now welcome Karun Kumar. Karun is a governance professional for the last 15 years. He brings rich and diverse experience in compliance management, risk management, internal audits, and consulting. During his career, he has held many senior managerial positions in organizations such as Telenor, PwC, and EY. Currently, he's leading internal controls and risk management for a large multi-locational retail giant, Mart Retail Limited. Karun is an MBA and also a member of Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He is a certified forensic auditor, CSR professional, and a diploma holder in corporate governance, internal audits from ICSI. He's an avid reader, cartoonist, and likes listening to music. Welcome, Karun.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks, everyone.
Our third participant today comes from manufacturing, Mr. R.K. Singh, or Dr. R.K. Singh, I should say. Dr. R.K. Singh is a vice president, head HR and IR at Tata Refractories Limited, formerly known as Tata Refractories. With over 22 years of experience in corporate HR, unit HR, IR, CSR, administration, among others, he has worked on the entire gamut of HR and IR services. Dr. R.K. Singh has worked with Coca-Cola, JK Group, and Hindalco in various HR and IR roles. He is an alumnus of IIM Calcutta, which happens to be my alumnus as well, and IIT Kharagpur. He's also a certified coach and is also certified in organizational development. Welcome, Rajesh.
Thank you, Rishi.
So with this introduction, I really look forward to a rich conversation around driving a culture of compliance with technology. Culture is something which can happen either accidentally or you can work towards creating a culture. Technology plays a vital role in putting the sunlight or spotlight on things that need improvement via people, process, or technology. So let's now look at the regulatory environment of India. I'll lay the foundation for our discussion today, the complexity around it, and then I will bring individuals into the conversation. So you may have seen this infographic before. India's regulatory environment is complex. There are 1,536 acts. Among them, subsumed are over 69,233 compliances with 6,618 filings across the law of the land. So as you can see, there are 7 broad categories in which compliances are led by labor, a concurrent subject on the constitution, where both center and states, they legislate laws. Around 30% of acts, which is 463 acts and rules among the 1536 come from labor. Everything from minimum wages, payment of bonus, equal remuneration, Factories Act, Interstate Migrant Workmen Act to CLRA, and many others are a part of this category. EHS stands for Environment, Health and Safety, deals with Environment Protection Act of 1986 and various rules including solid waste management, e-waste management, hazardous waste management, air, water, soil pollution norms, and all of those. Finance and taxation is pretty clear: direct tax, indirect tax, customs, FEMA, advanced tax, income tax, GST, and many other items, they fall there. Commercial is equipments, hoists, lifts, cranes, pressure vessels, boilers, tools, tackles, legal metrology, fire extinguishers, all of those fall there. Secretarial deals with company law matters, SEBI, MCA, ROC, exchanges, and so on. And industry-specific compliances deal with all regulators like TRIBE for telecom, IRDAI for insurance, FSSAI for food, RBI for banking, and so on and so forth. So that's the larger lay of the land as far as India is concerned. Now, here is a quick infographic, deals with the regulatory burden at various state levels. We've done a little bit of a heat map here. Don't wish to go through it, but this is available for your perusal if you would like. Moving forward, when we talk about compliances, and I will end our discussion today and bring our panelists into the conversations with this slide, where when we talk about compliances are complex. They have many faces, types, names, sizes, shapes, and jurisdictions. Some of the key examples here are various kinds of licenses, registrations, permissions, consent orders, returns, registers, challans, payments, remittances, displays, notices, exemptions. These are some examples. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but this gives you some semblance of compliances and statutory compliances that we speak about. So let's take the slides off our screen and let's get into the details of the conversation. So Karun, let me start the chat with you today, right? You come from retail as an industry. You've been a consultant for many years of your life. The retail as an industry accounts for 10% of the country's GDP, ranks 4th in the world in terms of size. Our retail markets are expected to touch $2 trillion in the next decade. It employs 35 million people, expected to create another 25 million jobs in the coming decade. So you are a part of an extremely exciting industry, if you will. The good thing is the industry is slated for growth. The bad news is that the compliance burden increases exponentially as you grow. I want to bring you into the conversation and have you share the kind of challenges in compliance management that you encounter on your day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Rishi. First of all, thank you so much for providing an opportunity to interact with such an august group and interacting with all of you. As you rightly mentioned that retail being a sector and of course working in telecom sector, these two extremes, wherein there is one thing which is quite common, which is the legal compliance framework. I'll be sharing my views in my individual capacity. I think before answering this question, I need to bring in 3 perspectives to the situation that what is it that we are dealing with. When we say overall compliances, there are 3 dimensions to it. I think from retail point of view, as well as from any other industry point of view, we need to look at situations from 3 elements. That is, one is scope, scale, and frequency. Second is interdependency among the different processes and organizations for compliances. And third is how we deal with these compliances. So coming to the first one, as of now, Rishi, you mentioned it absolutely rightly that with the degree and amount of compliances, over 69,000 compliances are applicable to an entity, and it is practically impossible for any one person, one team to ensure that the businesses are compliant. While the businesses are expected to be absolutely compliant towards everything that they do, but despite changes in the frequent regulations, and it increases the complexity to a very different degree. We also need to understand that most of these compliances are also decentralized in nature. That means out of 69,000 compliances that you mentioned and the breakup that you have shown, approximately 64% compliances pertains to state legislations. That means one needs to have a very much in-depth understanding of what is happening on the on-ground, and a full-fledged resources are required to just monitor that which all applicable compliances are important for you and which all critical compliances you are dealing with. Now, it's not about only the number of compliances. There are certain compliances which are also quite funny in nature. I'm not vouching for the accuracy of the information that I'm putting forward because I received it as a post, but I'm assumingly that at some point of time it had relevance. For example, Factories Act, the women were not allowed to work at night in factories unless a written consent is provided. We are living in a country wherein one can vote at the age of 18 or 21, but the drinking age is quite more. The funniest
by the way,
is,
one can go to a pub and enjoy oneself without any issues late in the night, and one cannot work in a factory.
yes, but at the same time, the latest one was basically, I was reading it and I came to know that one must needs to obtain even a license to fly a kite as per some regulations of Indian Aircraft Act. So that actually puts up in a situation wherein a host of regulations are applicable to us. And it is important for the businesses to understand that which all compliances are applicable for you, what is it that matters to you, and how do you ensure that all critical compliances are complied with. Now, I would also like to draw your attention towards a very important section of Companies Act, which is section 134, that basically speaks about the financial statements and board report. The director responsibility statement mentions that they need to devise proper systems in place to ensure that absolute compliance needs to be there for all applicable laws. It mentioned all applicable laws. That means there has to be 100% compliance. And it also specifies that the systems needs to be adequate and operating effectively. That puts lots of burden on the board, management, compliance officer, company secretaries, and the management, of course, to ensure that they need to be compliant 100% at all the times. Now, you actually need a cape and a superhero powers to ensure that you do it on your own, unless there is a technology-based solution that is there to help you out your needs. Second thing is that
compliance officers to be Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, all put together in one.
I think, Rishi, that's the expectation, and I think with the kind of roles that they handle and the vast thing that they handle, they need superpowers. And there are one ways you can have the superpowers. You can get it as a gift from the Almighty God. Second is you develop, you nurture, you create a compliance culture, and you have a right balance of people, process, and technology. So I think that's where the technology comes to the rescue and puts up and give us certain intervention that helps us a lot. Coming to the balance 2 interventions that we spoke about, it is about that compliance doesn't work in silos. The organization doesn't work in silos, even if there is a dependency on external as well as internal stakeholders across the value chain. Even if there is a non-compliance by a partner in, say, a labor compliance not being done by a contractor, it can affect your business as well. And the impact is not only with respect to the financial ones or the legal implication, but a reputational loss is also very important to consider while looking at those implications. Third is, how are we looking at situations when we are dealing and talking about the compliances? Often we are relying on the old methodologies wherein we are obtaining self-certifications over documents, and one is managing the compliances through elementary basis, spreadsheets and Excels. So that's old rudimentary approach is not going to lead us where we actually want to go. And with increasing complexity, I think there is a need for a better solution, a unified technology-led solution, which can help in recording, reporting, analyzing, monitoring, and ensuring compliance. So all 5 elements needs to be basically complied with. That's the need of the hour. So from retail point of view, and I would say for any industry point of view, these elements would basically suffice and require the focus of compliance officer and business managers. Over to you, Rishi.
Well, I like the 5 vectors that you've given, and we'll dive deeper when we get to the solutions part of our discussion today.
Thanks.
Let me now bring Pooja into the conversation. Pooja, you've spent close to 20 years in the industry. You spent time with a company called Suez, manufacturing, environmental implications and so on. Now you're a part of the IT-enabled services business, leading an offshore center from a compliance, risk management, and stuff perspective. The industry is growing massively. We contribute over $200 billion to the GDP of India. Very small percentage of the labor is in this industry, but the contribution to GDP is as high as 8 to 9%, growing in double digits. Tell us, from your perspective, what's the compliance burden? What's the challenges? Is this just anecdotal or is it real?
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks. And you summed it up very well in your introduction and setting up the context that it's a journey, and with my experience, and not specifically referring to just the organizations that I've worked with, but what I've seen even and learn from my peers as well, seen across the industry. I believe that we've come a long way. When we were at the beginning of our career, I remember it. There was a kind of a segregation also of sorts, and you could all chime in whether you agree or not, that listed companies used to be perceived as the ones who will be compliant, and private companies were thought of to be that, hoga compliance, but not to the extent that it should be, and the adherence will not be, and the focus will not be to the extent that it should be. But, and that has changed across the years also because of the change in regulations and the Companies Act, where, there has been a lot of focus on private companies also to be compliant, and also the landscape changing with the globalization and with a lot of, multinationals coming in. And I would not say that even the Indian companies, if you look at today, will have robust compliance management and risk management systems. Now, it also depends on the scale of organizations. And as Karun, you mentioned that we used to use very elementary ways of dealing with compliance management, risk management, regulatory compliance, statutory compliance. And that, in fact, also led and, posed challenges as to how do you comply. One, the tone from the top, the focus, and the scale of compliance without the intervention of technology or tools available today used to be thought of more as a burden, and it was left more to the legal risk and compliance departments to just manage. One was that there wasn't even a necessary awareness around it, percolating down into the organization, starting right from the top. The value and the effectiveness that compliance brings to business and the edge that it gets to business wasn't laid well, I believe, but in the past decades, if you see. But now I think, times have changed. There have been times where you see, say, JV partners together. Some of the JV partners might be very stringent and might have zero tolerance for any non-compliance. And there could be others who are not that focused. That could also bring in the culture where it's very difficult to take the compliance agenda forward. Right. And like you mentioned, Karun, that you have across 400 locations. Every state has different laws. How do you comply? The corporate sitting at one level, howsoever compliant you are, howsoever compliance focused you are, to kind of get that message across into the organization to various locations was also very difficult, because there'll be people who will be thinking compliance to just be a roadblock to their execution strategies. And they would just keep it to the limited to the risk compliance or legal functions to manage it for them. And focus from the board is one, where there's a statement by the directors, but it was also the duty of the company secretaries, the general counsels, the risk managers to highlight to the board what it would really entail to certify, and what all challenges would they be facing. So I guess it's both ways, tone from the top, and even the departments who would be managing. Like seen typically compliance, say, rolling up in the past decades. We've seen rolls up to the finance function, right? The focus will be completely different. Now, with times, it has changed. Compliance rolling up to whosoever, it need not be that it rolls up to X function or Y function, but somebody who is, ready to take on that mandate, is walking the talk, right? And that will set the tone in the whole organization as to what compliance brings in when it is embedded into the business, and it becomes the center, and you are at the forefront of whatever business strategies are being developed. I think that sets the tone. But we've come a long way, and look at the focus that we are having. I mean, having such panel discussions in itself, shows that what kind of focus is there today, on compliance and globalization, the pace of regulatory changes. Sometimes it also becomes difficult when, if you would have recently seen what has happened to the data privacy bill. We were working on it for 4 years, and suddenly it just goes away. So,
No, it will come back soon in a
yes,
different avatar.
yes,
I'm
yes,
sure everybody around the globe recognizes the importance of data privacy and
exactly.
protection, especially in a country like India with so many digital consumers now. So I don't think
Yes,
it's gone for good. It's going to show up very soon. We
it's
need to be
going to show
prepared.
up. Yes, yeah, in a new avatar.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
just summarizing some of the points that Karun and Pooja you have mentioned. Karun spoke about contractors, so many contractors, and I'm sure in a company like Mart Retail, where he's leading some of these functions, you're not operating in isolation. You're operating in an ecosystem of vendors, suppliers, partners, and not all of them will have similar practices, robust processes, a similar sensitivity to compliance. It's possible that half of them don't even care enough about compliance, and the spillover risk or the residual risk then spreads to your organization as well. So that's one big area. Second one, law of the land changes 4,500 times a year. These changes are published on 2,233 different websites across union states and union territories and local laws. How do you get to grips with that, right? Third, an organization which is multi-locational, multi-entity, multi-state, different businesses, obviously poses greater risk around lack of compliance or missing compliances, right? Fourth, and Pooja, you mentioned something similar, which I would like to amplify for our audience, that in majority of the organizations, including the ones today, which are large, everybody around the organization thinks that compliance officer ko tankha milti hai compliance ensure karne ki. Whereas the reality is that compliance officer is just taking the risk, a disproportionate amount of risk. Their neck is on the line, but compliance has to be done by so many people behind the scenes, because compliance officer is not likely to have all the empowerment, authority, capability, people, resources, money to be able to ensure that. So that's yet another big challenge that the companies have. Now let me quickly bring RK into the conversation. RK, you've had a rich career, great academic credentials, worked with large companies, have seen HR, IR, administration from close quarters. Tell us about the challenges that you've seen from your vantage point.
Yes, sure, Rishi. It's a very good point captured by Karun and Pooja. So I would also validate that, yes, it's the journey, and will definitely like to tell on the positive note that organizations are accepting the technology-based compliances. And there is no choice as well, and people are now ready. Management, the line managers, all are getting ready for e-compliances. What I would say that, yes, the Corona times, the COVID times probably fast track the e-based management in the organization. And this is the reality, the fast tracking, for example, even e-recruitment, e-onboarding. So everything in the organization getting technology, the utilization of technology is increasing extensively. So there is no denying of the fact that technology-based compliance is the need of the hour. The challenges are which has been earlier also. The challenges, first of all, the ownership by line managers, acceptance by the top team, and that is where the role of HR and the compliance officer at the top level. For example, if in a company it is the company secretary and legal head, then how is he putting it up in the board, in the audit committee? For example, I would say that, okay, the compliance report, the adherence to compliance report, if it is put in the audit committee, in the board, and from there it is driven, naturally across the organization, this challenge is addressed. So I'm say this is the part of addressing, but the challenges and addressing the challenges, though addressing those challenges are, I'm mentioning just simultaneously. In terms of, for example, line managers, compliance officer or the HR, the person dealing with the labor laws, what is his authority? Actually, if it is overtime, so then the line managers in the department has to manage that overtime. And if the dictate from the audit committee, there the overtime rules are complied, and then we percolate down the line that yes, this has to be complied come what may, then naturally all the line managers are then aware that yes, we have to comply to the OT rules. Of course, there are certain areas where in the manufacturing, how OT is misused by the some of the ways that it should not be. So that is the another aspect of management. And then what Pooja also shared, if you have the units across India or across different locations, and then there lies the greater requirement of the e-governance or e-technology-based compliance. So for example, we have an office in Bombay, and then Shops and Establishment Act that requires the local, the compliance and display of the certain notices. And we based in, for example, Odisha and Kolkata, how do we manage that? The local manager, local in charge, they have to do that. And then if we are B2B customer and we are taking on, we are as a vendor to for example, a big manufacturing Tata Steel, and they require us to comply with the contractor labor that we deploy there. And not only the compliance at the site, but also at the factory level, as certain requirements. For example, if you are SA 8000 requirement, then you have to have a great deal of contractor labor compliance requirement. And to that extent, the audit committee, audit team, we have recently certified in SA 8000, and we could see that they don't focus on the compliance of the on-roll worker. They know that, yes, company is completely compliant, but this is an area, and this is a challenging area. This is an area where the compliance is managed. It is not the compliance is completely compliant. But now the challenge is that the digitization has grown in the ranks of government also, and it is very well accepted fact, whether it is e-Shram portal or number of compliance that has to be put on the online thing for the government rectification. So there is no option also left, and there is a need of the hour also that we move to the technology platform. So the best way, what could be that? Yes, we have the contractor compliance management software, which is integrated to our internal system of compliances. And then once we hire the contractor, for example, we have the work order where the undertaking on the compliance is also taken up. And then the compliance is monitored. And then we, at the every month pay cycle, we monitor that, yes, whatever the duty hour in and out punching has shown, that duty hour is similarly reflected in wage register, and the same is paid to the contractor. And even that, not only that, the contractor is aware. How do we know that contractor is aware? Call few contractors, take a sample testing, roam around in the factory and check them. Are you aware that, are you getting PFU deducted? Is your ESI getting done? So all these are the challenges, but all the challenges had solutions. And we in the manufacturing, we are probably, I would believe, the company which are reputed multinational, they have big focus, and particularly the multinational which is a brand, they want to protect their brand extremely well. For example, if I was in Coca-Cola, and directive from Atlanta, not the slightest lacuna should happen in the compliance, and then you are always on the altar of this the sacrifices that okay, you have to have complete compliance, even if it requires a lot of team members, but it has to be there. But this culture of compliance is to be built, and yes, of course, HR, compliance officer, legal officer, they are the custodian, but the biggest and the best custodian is the top management, which has to be convinced. And the digitization in the government sphere is also going on, so it's natural that we are also complying, and we are on the progress of the journey is on, and hopeful that yes, after some time, whatever level of management we used to do in the past, some 10 years back, that management is over. And for even government officers, those enforcement officers now are supporting on the online compliances, and the scope is now definitely a scope of progress is definitely there.
So RK, some very interesting points within the organization, the challenges you mentioned about a lot of digitization that government is taking up at scale. 10 years ago and 10 years, in 10 years, the kind of digitization that we are seeing in the government is incredible. Starting with digital payments, 8 November 2016, I still remember when demonetization happened, the country struggled to find instrument to exchange value, right? Companies like Paytm came on because there was a digital solution. Today, if the same thing happened, majority of the Indians won't feel a pinch because everything is so digital. We can buy sabzi bhaji tarkari at 10 rupees with Google Pay or Phone Pay or Bheem or one of the UPI applications. We administered 200 crore vaccines by way of Arogya Setu or COVID apps, and we have digitally created certificates which are traceable with a QR code, and that's commendable. Whether you look at ESI or PF, all have gone from paper waste to digital portals. You look at MCI, every single filing today is largely happening electronically. There is no paper going into MCA. There are no physical visits required to the ROC. We recently, last week, Madam Madhvi Puri Butch, Chairperson, SEBI launched a digital compliance portal with us in a FICCI event. Another example where the government is looking to create paperless, presenceless, and cashless compliance. Now, it begs a question that if government is going so aggressive with digitization, can corporates afford to be left behind? And are we putting in the right investments in order to create a culture of compliance that goes beyond a Karun or a Pooja or a Rajesh, where there is a transparent, accountable, timely, and traceable environment where CEO does not need to call anyone, he or she simply needs to log on to a portal, go to a dashboard and see that where you have issues, who are consistent defaulters, where there is maximum exposure, so that a top-down, which you mentioned, Rajesh, around culture around compliance can be created. So I think a lot of good points have been said in the conversation so far. Number of challenges around managing compliance have been articulated from retail, from IT-enabled services, and from manufacturing. Let me now shift gears. We all know there are problems. We all know there is a legacy of compliance. There are too many acts, too many sections, too many compliances, too many changes to the law of the land, too many filings. Keeping track of them can be challenging. How do we create a culture of compliance? What is the role that technology plays? Let's talk about solutions now. So let me change the order a little bit. Pooja, let me get you into the conversation. You've spent considerable amount of time, domestic organizations, internal or international organizations. International organizations come with a different level of sensitivity, different kinds of processes, systems. There is a no tolerance to non-compliance in numerous cases that we have seen from our experience. Tell us, what are those practices that our audience today should take back with them to create a culture of compliance, and does technology play a role there?
Rishi, technology definitely has to play a role and, does play a role these days. And first of all, you very well said that a culture of compliance has to be embedded in the fabric of the organization. It starts with a few things. The tone has to be definitely set from the top. You have to walk the talk. If organization-wide employees know that the focus is on compliance, and it is, there are in multinational specifically, there is zero tolerance to any kind of non-compliance. So definitely the tone has to be set from the top. Now, the cost of compliance is an investment. It's no more a cost, and that value of compliance has to be demonstrated and cascaded in the organization, that why compliance is necessary, this investment versus the cost of non-compliance, and associated with this the reputational damage that an organization can suffer if there's non-compliance in this day and age. What will it get the organization into, where the business is going to suffer? It can halt your business. So demonstrating value, setting the tone from the top is very, very important. Another we have seen that reactive programs for risk management, compliance, legal or regulatory statutory compliances won't help. We have to be proactive, have advanced programs, and that can't help without technology. That can't be done without the use of technology. Definitely to adopt programs with the technological advancements, the culture has to be set, your data has to be in place, which is very important. Without streamlining your data, mining your data properly, arranging your data properly, you won't be even able to leverage technology in the right sense. And the tools that you adopt have to speak to amongst themselves. It should not be just restricted to, say, a legal or a risk or a compliance department to, say, adopt tools in silos. The tools have to speak to each other, because if with the kind of regulatory changes that we have, each and every department is responsible for compliance. You have to first assess what all is applicable, cascade whosoever is responsible within the organization, cascade it to the respective functions, that this has to be complied with. Definitely you'll have to use technology, because in this day and age you can't do without technology. The sheets, the Excel sheets, and sitting back doing a tick mark exercise would not help, because of the changes also that we see day in and day out. But any sort of technology, any sort of tool will only be helpful if there is a culture of compliance within the organization. If there is a belief that, yes, there is zero tolerance and it will lead to a business advantage, if we are compliant. Now, compliance officers also have a role here to play. They should not be approaching the business just when there's a need to comply. They should have a relationship with the business. They are the ones who are responsible to let as Rajesh said, the line managers, the function leaders know what role they are supposed to play in cascading compliance within the organization. Now, one of the things that we do, um, we start at the very beginning, the day the employee joins, and cascading information regarding compliance, that we have zero tolerance towards compliance. What are our enterprise risk management programs? How do we manage our regulatory compliances? That's all a part of the induction of an employee. So the tone is set right from the day an employee joins. That's very important. And you should have, we've seen through the pandemic that the organizations who were ready with their data, who had streamlined their data, who had already adopted technology for their compliance management, had a smooth sail. There were challenges for sure, but it was a smooth sail to manage everything during the pandemic. And after the pandemic, at least we are all sure that adopting technology is no more an option. It has become a necessity. Virtual trainings, for an example, organizations that have multiple locations across the globe, across India, you can't do without adopting the relevant tools that are available today in the market to cascade information regarding compliance within the organization. So these are a few pointers that I think are very, very relevant, and it's not a siloed function that'll operate standalone basis to inculcate a compliance culture in the organization. It has to be embedded in the business. You have to be seen and demonstrating what's the value of compliance, embedding it into the business, and also see that how you also kind of evolve and transform the tools that you adopt with the changes that are happening in the market. The tools should be relevant for the business, and the business function should also see value coming out of those tools, right? A general counsel is on the board these days, or transacts a lot with the board. The value that the general counsels or the compliance officers will be able to demonstrate, where the directors have to certify, and the confidence that you can give them with your regulatory compliance management that you've already done, and there's a continuous program to monitor compliances. I think if that comfort is given to the board, it can be embedded into the strategy of the organization.
So very well said, Pooja. Made a few lovely points. Executive sponsorship by far, right? If your executives, your CEO, MD, and the key functionaries of the organization, they actually don't care enough, chances are there is a cascading effect of that tone from the top on the rest of the organization. But if there is a zero tolerance for these misdemeanors of whatever size and shape, then that becomes embedded into the collective consciousness of the enterprise. So while we continue to talk about this.
Another quote that I read somewhere, Rishi, is very relevant, that if you do not have a commensurate risk management program for any organization that you work with, any kind of business that the organization will turn risky.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, indeed. So let me just let our audience know, we have 3 esteemed guests and panelists today. They are available until 4 o'clock. I'm sure many of you may have questions directed at them. Please use the Q&A section, post your question, and I will request our panelists to take a look at those and make sure that we can try and respond to as many as practically feasible today. So I think coming back to Pooja, your points, tone from the top, executive sponsorship, creating processes via tools, enforcing them via tools. And as they say, sunshine is the best disinfectant. You put the spotlight on anything, cultures start changing. What cannot be measured cannot be improved. So you start measuring non-compliance and suddenly you will start seeing changing cultures there. Some of the things that we talk about to our clients for creating a culture, have a monthly review of compliance with all your executives or all your departmental heads or functional heads, and talk about, okay, we had 789 compliances as an example for the month. Out of them, 655 were done on time, and there is a gap in these 100 plus compliances. 80 of them are coming from one department, 20 of them are coming from another department. You have that chat once, and you will see next month that 100 will get dropped to 50, and the following month it will probably come to 20. And before you know, in a few months, you will have compliance to a very, very reasonable level, and your outstanding residual risk will come down. So that's one cultural change or one practice that I highly recommend to executives. Now, Karun, let me bring you into the conversation. You deal with a very, very complex compliance environment, 400 plus retail stores, 15 to 20 licenses per retail store, different states, at least 18 to 20 states in the country, as many municipal corporations, as many different kinds of licenses, displays, and so on and so forth. how do you think the culture of compliance in hundreds of users of compliance around the country under your organization for which you take accountability, how technology plays a role in creating a culture of compliance?
Actually, fairly, my fellow panelist Pooja has made a very important point. So, Mr. Rajesh also made that very clear. I think the answer lies in that it starts with people. So what is the value system that the organization has a major impact on how the organization and compliance is driven in the organization. So be it any governance framework, I'm not restricting it to legal compliance framework, be it your SOX framework, be it risk management, be it legal compliance, it starts with tone at the top. One thing that you find similar across all governance framework is what is it, the risk appetite of the management about the legal compliance. So I think from what we have been able to demonstrate so far, and is that there's a strong impetus from the board and the management that helps in driving that. However, is there a scope of improvement in terms of increasing the efficiency? That is something where a technology comes at a huge benefit. I would say the entire strategy of creating compliance culture is based on three important elements. So compliance culture is manifested from the organizational values. It is nurtured by the people of the organization, and it is effectively implemented by the technology. So there are three interplaying factors.
I really like that construct. Can you repeat that for our audience one more time?
Of course. So basically what I mentioned, that is a compliance culture is manifested from the core values of what organization follows. It is nurtured by the people and effectively implemented by the technology. Now, technology is the bridge between people and process. You have the right set of people, you have the processes, but technology is one thing that actually joins the two. Pooja gave a very apt example of covering the employees right from catching them young, putting employees to a hire to retire cycle. Across the life cycle, they should be trained. A very important element, that how are we dealing with people. So a culture is imbibed and created. It has to be made as a way of working. Rather than dictating, it is the compliance officer's role to guide people and make it relevant for people. Often what happens is that there are a host of compliances which are thrown to the mercy of the readers, that you got to comply with this. What a technology can do that is, what is in it for you is answered aptly by the technology only. For example, a product manager is responsible for designing a particular product, say in a manufacturing or in a telecom sector. Now he has to comply a certain set of regulations while designing a product. Now, a technology-led solutions will help us in fixation of accountability and responsibility, a very pinpointed one. And Rishi, what gets measured gets monitored. So basically, you rightly mentioned that if you put that in form of a measurable dashboard, flash it to the relevant stakeholders, it gets implemented. Lastly, there is one important element is incentivizing ethical behavior by incorporating into the performance reviews is something that technology helps in doing it effectively. And I would say it is, as of now, the real essence, as Pooja also mentioned, that the compliance solution doesn't need to work in silos. It has to be one unified view, whether you want to look at your critical compliances, your critical tasks, your compliance and controls, your key risks, your board action taken, your other deliverables, and lately, even the ESG indicators and parameters that you have to define it internally and then report it to external stakeholders. There is a need to have one-stop shop with respect to a governance solution that can solve the needs. I think that's where technology has an important role to play as of now. Maybe in the future, when AI and ML-based technology would come in, we would have a day wherein you can upload a document and we can see whether it's compliant or not. As of now, there's some bit of element required in terms of verifying that. You might see, and in fact, it has already started happening, that you can verify the authenticity of documents. The blockchain technology is being used. So while every regulator is improving, it's a onus, it's a writing on the wall, how organizations are required to respond to it. Over to you, Rishi.
Well, very well said. If time permits, I would want you to talk about that 5 vectors that you had mentioned during the problem definition of our discussion as well. Very, very important points around creating a culture, role of technology, regulators going digital at a breakneck speed, government embracing technology at all levels under the Digital India program, and how it puts an increased onus on compliance officers to drive that culture creation, the change of culture, so that compliance is not a one person's job. Now, Rajesh, you come from a very HR, IR, administration focus. HR has formed, or labor compliance has formed 30% of the volume of acts and rules, 47% of the compliances, and a whopping 68% of the criminality in India's employer compliance universe comes from labor law. So in a recent report that I had co-authored with Gautam Chikkarmane from ORF, we had put a spotlight on 26,134 items which had criminality and jail term among the 69,233 that I showed you earlier when we started this conversation, and a whopping 17,000 plus, they came from the labor laws. Now, we live in interesting times. Labor laws are going through one of its kind codification exercise over the last few years. Activity started back in 2002 when the Second National Commission for Labor submitted the report, and we are getting to a point where union has gone ahead, legislated the bills, the codes, they've gone ahead, notified the rules. States are now doing a good job of notifying rules. All of this is going to potentially lead to a rationalized labor compliance regime. In the old scenario and in the new scenario, what are your thoughts on using technology to create that culture of compliance?
Yes, so good and interesting point that yes, over the period, the compliance and its acceptance from managing compliance to the accepting in spirit and then executing on that line has become pertinent, and the organizations are accepting. Whether it is government or courts, they all are sort of, it's like economies got, say, liberalization gradually, modernization and globalization. Similarly, the courts, whether it's labor courts or government officers, they have also accepted that, yes, compliance has to be more organization friendly. It has to take care of labor, but it has to be more organization friendly. And that is, the reflection is there in the codes, labor codes that are coming up. So there are certain provisions which are getting to the line that, yes, the stringent that it was earlier, you have to comply, you have to submit a document, those are getting away. And you have this, self-certification is in, for example, in Odisha, certain areas you have self-certification allowed by the government. So the compliance landscape and its acceptance of online is the writing on the wall, and accepted, well accepted. The challenge and problem lies that we have certain mindset issue in the government functionaries, where even if the organization is ready, those mindset issues, the acceptance, for example, with the speed that is happening in the organization, if it happens at the same speed in the government sector, then it would be where, there would be a complete match. And that mismatch is there. So this is one of the big challenge, that mismatch. You are going with a speed of the digitization. We're trying to match with the requirement of the times. The lag behind is that, yes, but it's not that in a generic statement I would like to tell, but yes, there are people, there are commissioners, deputy labor commissioners, we are coming forward. They themselves are taking up, they have visited for example, our factory, and they have taken classes of our contractors. Let's see how we are going to help you if you do this. So there are people across the board who are accepting the digitization, the more educated part, and then those mindset we are able to say ward off or say handle. In the organization, for example, there are a number of softwares. In the last two organizations where I worked, I will go with a practical example. There is a software, and in the software, the software finalization happens with the consultant study what are the compliances and which department, which function head, and which person should be responsible. There is certain escalation, and if this person does not do the comply on that, it should escalate to this senior, then finally to his senior, and then the function head. So this escalation matrix is there, and then the software is available. Different department and functions are made responsible. And for example, this is happening month by month. So all the compliances are finally, comes up into a report. In the quarterly report, when the company secretary or legal officer has to submit to the board or the audit committee, and he would take out the printout of the compliance summary snapshot, one page snapshot. These are the compliances, and this all department has say completed, or it gets highlighted. This particular function has not say complied, so this gets highlighted, and nobody would dare. If you say that in the organization, the hierarchy and the drive is directly from top. So if somebody say that yes, this report is going to the top, naturally the natural compliance happens a lot there. And then the driving by the legal officer, the HR, and how and why it is important, that realization also helps. So this is the way both the companies, I saw that yes, the report is generated online. There is a summary compliance report which is submitted to the audit committee and board, and that helps to identify and monitor. And within the compliances, what we specifically look for, that what are the high risk category, medium risk category, and low risk category. So which has immediate impact on the factory manager and the CEO, and where the imprisonment, the fine, and the brand, etc. A lot of those things are there. So those are categorized into high risk versus those for day-to-day routine matters, low risk. So these plenty of softwares are available, and this finally culminate into a report, and that is one easy solution to that. But yes, of course, you have to continuously, as a champion of the compliance, monitor, propagate, give training across, and involves, if required, government officers as well, and the top management also, to communicate the significance and commitment to the compliance. That is the way out.
Excellent. Well, RK, thank you. Very well articulated. Our audience have put 3 questions in there, and we are 3 minutes away from our top of the hour. I do request other questions if there are any. Let us first take Ankur Jakal's question. As a compliance officer, big challenge is that the user shall be aware about the compliance requirements. So how to have a training and awareness program across all levels to adhere to the compliance requirement? Pooja, would you like to give it a shot?
Sure, Rishi. As I stated earlier, that it's very important to have a continuous training program throughout the year, and you can make it more effective when the people responsible for imparting the training, that's the compliance department or the legal department, they understand business. And training has to happen throughout the year with awareness and sensitization sessions. And when you're closely embedded with business, you keep on interacting with the business regularly and then conduct these programs integrated with their business programs. That is how your training will be more effective. Instead of maybe once in 3 or 6 months, you just raise your hand and say, oh, there's this requirement and now we should have this training, and ask everybody to comply. You cannot dictate. You have to work closely with business and with the teams, even educate the function heads, as we've all alluded to earlier. Make them the champions, and make them also responsible to cascade relevant information within their teams, and make them your effective business partners to impart those trainings, because that'll be very impactful, that'll be very effective if the teams see that their leaders know about it, and they are putting equal impetus to those trainings. That will make those trainings very effective. And as I said earlier, that one of the things and one of the practices that start from the very beginning, that you induct employees. Start small maybe, but make it more interesting. Have regular communication around it. That is when the employees also will see value in the information being cascaded, and they'll be then effectively even listening and be a part of those programs. Another point I think Karun mentioned is that incentivize good behavior. Incentivize your culture champions within the organization. built into the KRAs, and then will, this integrated incentivization, your training programs linked to your KRAs will then be impactful.
So great points, Pooja. I really like one point you mentioned about creating or forging a camaraderie between the compliance professionals and the
And
rest
the
of the
business.
organization. I often find that they are at daggers drawn. Oftentimes, they think they are at cross purposes, which is actually not the case. The compliance professionals are front-ending the conversation, which needs to be supported by all the other functions of the organization. Until that camaraderie, that teamwork is there, where all of them are aligned to a common goal, you'll often find that compliance officers will say, okay, we need you to impart this training over the next 1 month, and the functional head will say, listen, we have too many items going on, don't waste our time. This is all less useful, for lack of a better word, nonsensical stuff. Don't bother us with that. Now that is a huge problem. Until you
Be a part of the solutioning. I guess
exactly.
if you're part of the solutioning with the business will listen to you effectively.
And I think yet another point you mentioned is, don't just show up when there is something to deal with.
Yeah.
Build the relationship so that over a period of time, you can have lunch and have coffee with them, and they know you are a well-meaning person and you are not out there to throw them under the bus, but actually help them become successful. They recognize that it's important for them to come to you at the right time rather than on the 11th hour when a decision is required and you are in a tight spot.
Very relevant.
Yes, RK.
Yeah, just Rishi wanted to add the use of technology in training also to make the matter simpler. Before COVID, what we used to do, for example, for post training, prevention of sexual harassment related training, we used to call people in the training center, we used to visit plant. And this is before COVID. After COVID, we created a e-module, and then it's the certification automatically happens. At the end of it, there are complete set of questionnaire, and which gets continuously changing for each and every participant. So this is the way technology can be utilized, and making complex things simpler, and then using the technology for those training. This is one example. Maybe we can leverage those in other areas as well.
Yeah, edtech is going places. So absolutely. So I know we are about 2 minutes already delayed. There are a couple of more questions. Karun, would you like to take one of the two?
Sure, Rishi. I think the question that we have got is that comes to compliance, what is more important for the culture, transparency or timeliness? I think both of them are related to each other. While the objective is to increase transparency and remain compliant, timeliness is an outcome of a properly implemented compliance framework. See, got the basics right. If your compliance framework is apt, timeliness will follow. But the objective is that you have to infuse 100% transparency and ethics in the compliance function, as well as in the dealings also. I think we have got one more question that, in our opinion, 5 years from now, what is the percent of listed organizations will use technology from compliance management? I think it's writing on the wall, and with the kind of exposures that listed entities are subjected to with either UPSI or now BRSR and now all other things, the companies will be required to use the compliance solutions inevitably. It's a matter of choice when they want to do that, but the earlier they adopt, the better maturity they will have it once they want to scale the operations and make compliance as a way of working.
I would put a number of 90 to 95% as my answer.
Definitely.
What do you think, Pooja?
No, definitely. Look at the changes that have happened during the pandemic, even specifically referring to the Companies Act. And I was just talking to one of my colleagues that the exemption to hold the shareholders meeting virtually is there till 31st December 2022. And there are listed organizations who are, representing to the government that let it be there. That already shows that they've taken to adopting technology, right? And we've all have come a long way, and we just don't want to go back. We should just move ahead from here. So I think listed organizations would have seen a lot of value adopting technology, and it's they have scale, so more relevance of technology for listed organizations to adopt, the relevant tools. And just one point to what Karun mentioned regarding importance to transparency and timeliness. I think bad news doesn't age well. So if you promote transparency, people will feel very comfortable to come up and highlight the issues that they should. And if you promote transparency, timeliness will come along with it.
Totally. Couldn't agree more with you. In fact, I had the pleasure of hearing SEBI chairperson, Madam Madhvi Puri Butch, speak about the power of technology in helping organizations and regulators do the good job of enforcing compliances, managing compliances, deepening the capital markets in one of the recent capital market summit hosted by FICCI last week. And she was so articulate in terms of power of technology to transform in nation building, data-driven collaborative practices, principle-driven approach for the regulator. I mean, I think technology is the way to go. Well, we are 6 minutes over the hour. I really thank our audience today for staying patient, engaging with us. I thank all of the panelists here who took their valuable time off their compliance and risk management schedules to come and spend the time with us, share their practices, and enrich the overall discussion. There are not enough discussions in the ecosystem on how to stay on the right side of the law. I'm glad all of you feel that spreading this knowledge is only going to make us a well-placed country in terms of governance, risk, and compliance infrastructure. So thank you again. I look forward to seeing all of you in our next edition sometime next month. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.